very often, procrastination is actually a manifestation of a fear of failure. People will say, it takes 21 days to build a habit. The interesting thing is that that finding was based on how long it took people to get used to their new face following plastic surgery.
Yeah.
If you want to build a new habit, the key is to prioritize. There's two types of perfectionism. Other-orientated perfectionism, which is where we think that people expect perfection of us, and self-orientated perfectionism, which describes expecting perfection of ourselves. The number one thing you can do is to try to exercise some self-compassion. And the most simple way that I can describe that is try to be the friend to yourself that you aspire to be to others.
That's good.
Say I'm working towards a goal and I fail to achieve that goal. There's a tendency sometimes for my self-talk to be quite negative and self-critical. So there's various things you can do, but my number one tip is...
Hey everyone, and welcome to the All It Takes Is a Goal podcast. I've spent the last 15 years helping more than 1 million people achieve everything from their smallest first step to their wildest dreams. Building a remarkable life is simple. Great thoughts turn into great actions turn into great results. That's what we explore on this podcast. I'm your host, John Acuff, and today I'm interviewing Dr. James Hewitt. Who is that? I'm so glad you've asked because I've got his bio. Former elite racing cyclist turned human performance scientist, Dr. James Hewitt equips leaders and teams to achieve sustainable high performance using real science, not hacks, so they can thrive in today's always-on world. His regenerative performance framework, which is a book he wrote that I just read, which was fantastic, is used by Fortune 500 companies and Formula One teams across 30 countries, more than 30 countries. It translates athletic training science into practical strategies for thriving in an always-on work culture. We had a fantastic conversation. You're going to love this conversation. Here's my interview with Dr. James Hewitt. James, thank you so much for joining me. I'm excited about this interview.
Likewise, really happy to be here.
Yeah, we got to meet officially at the Global Leadership Summit just back in August. We were both sharing the stage. You had your family with you. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was probably one of the most outstanding experiences I've had of being part of an event. As you mentioned, my family got to come with me, which was really fun. Mm-hmm. It's one of the first times my kids got to see me speak live. And what a venue to do that in front of, 7,500, 8,000 people. Yeah,
you should tell them that's always like this. Well, it's always 7,000 people. It's always global.
Every time.
It's never a small hotel in a conference room. Yeah, that was really fun. I've read your book. I listened to it technically. And my first question right out of the gate is, do you feel like you British authors have an advantage over American authors with your accent? Because when I hear somebody British read their audiobook, I go, this is like C.S. Lewis. Everything he's saying is intelligent. And I don't think anyone says that same thing. Like in England, you guys don't hear an American accent and go, I better take notes, right?
Well, I don't know. I think there's an effect, isn't there, where when you're in a different environment, a different context, that difference implies that maybe there's something new to learn. Yeah. So I do think it still works with people with an American accent.
I don't think so. But I think you're being nice.
But Americans do like the English accent. The funny thing is, though, is that when I'm in the UK, people pick up on the fact that I have a bit of a regional accent.
What's your region?
So I was from the East Midlands. I was born in Nottingham. And my father is originally from Yorkshire, from a mining town called Barnsley. Yeah. So when I'm in the US, everyone's like, oh, James, we love your accent. It sounds so sophisticated. Yeah. And then when I'm in the UK, people are like, are you from the north? So it's,
But see, even you saying my dad was from a mining town called Barnsley, I was like, that seemed really smart, the way he said that. That must have been a smart mining town.
I just need to leverage that.
Yeah, you should. You could do a tour in America just called I Have a British Accent and I'm a Doctor. So Dr. James Hewitt, I think are both two amazing things. What's fun about your background, and reading the book, this comes through, I feel like you tested a lot of these ideas as a cyclist because you're a competitive cyclist. And then you got really fascinated about how do they work on a broader, bigger level. Is that part of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this journey into human performance began with my own performance when I was a full-time racing cyclist. So I've been obsessed with things that go fast for as long as I can remember. And that eventually led me to go and pursue this dream of becoming a professional cyclist. So I moved to the south of France and it was a fantastic experience. I got to race full-time for several years, won a few races, but the writing was on the wall that I was never going to be a top rider. So I kind of shifted my focus, went back to to university in the UK, studied sports science, and then started to focus on other people's performance. That expanded beyond sport into the business world, where I'm really focused today. But those lessons still really apply. And I took a lot from that time that still generates value for me and for the people that I work with today.
Do you feel like you were goal-driven as a kid? Like, because sometimes the show's called All It Takes is a Goal. So sometimes we get people on here and they go, I had a paper out when I was 4. Like when I was 6, I was doing creatine. Do you feel like you were, if people in Barnsley, it was Barnsley? If people in Barnsley could say, James was always this way, were you always this way, or did it develop later in life?
Now, I've always been very goal-driven, probably to the point of being a bit obsessive, perfectionistic. Initially, that was about my academic studies at school. So I was always an achiever. But initially, I wanted to be an astronaut. That was my kind of my first passion. We actually lived in the States for a while when I was a kid. Here in the South, we lived in Shreveport, Louisiana.
I was going to assume that. I felt there was a little Cajun accent I was picking up. Who would have guessed Shreveport, Louisiana?
For 3 years with my dad's job, he was in pharmaceuticals.
Gotcha.
And I got exposed to the space program there. This was when everyone was still excited about watching shuttle launches.
Sure.
That became more routine. And so my first big goal was trying to become an astronaut. But yeah, so I've always been very fixed on clear goals. Enjoyed working towards something, but probably my challenge has been that kind of perfectionism that goes with it, and what happens when you don't hit your goal. And obviously, I didn't become an astronaut, so that was one of my
here you are. I didn't bring it up because I knew it was sensitive.
Sore point.
But for you, okay, so the obsessive thing is interesting. What's a goal or an attempt you've tried where it went too far, and maybe your wife, because one of my kind of regulators is my wife, Jenny, who will go, hey, I think you've sucked the joy out of that thing. And you're now past, like you would call it, hyper optimizer. Like that's a phrase you use a lot in your book. What's a goal you've done that on that you've had to pull back on, or just go, that started in a great place, but man, I'm measuring macros, or because I feel like cyclists in general seem obsessive to me. Because absolutely. There's weight, there's wind resistance, you're shaving your legs for fast, like anytime you're moving hair for faster performance, I think it's a sign. So for you, what's a goal where it's kind of dipped into the obsessive and you've had to pull it back?
There's several. I can give you a really clear one from sport and also one from my kind of professional life as a business person as well. In sport, it was around nutrition actually. So cycling's a really curious sport because it's so measurable. So you can model what's required to perform really well in a particular race. You can look at the terrain. You can figure out what power output you need to produce
wattage
in wattage, in given parts of that route. And that's basically you're literally measuring how hard you need to push on the pedals for how long. But the ultimate metric is not just how hard you can push on the pedals, it's how much you weigh because of this ratio called power to weight ratio. And that's really what's going to determine essentially how fast can you go up a hill, which is often where races are won and lost. So you're always trying to find this sweet spot between producing the most power that you can at the lowest weight. And it can lead to this obsession in cyclists with reducing your body weight. And you're actually limited in terms of how light your bike can be by regulations. You at a certain point, you say, how can I strip more off me? And so I became completely obsessed with that. And actually to a fault, because I ended up going too far and losing too much weight and then starting to lose power. But also, along the way, just developed this very unhelpful relationship with eating. Because I had these very specific goals around my carbohydrates, my proteins, my fats, my calorie intake. Essentially, I was kind of starving myself. And I look back now, and I was chronically underfueled. So, this, what could have been quite helpful for my performance, this goal of optimizing power to weight ratio, actually ended up becoming this hyper-optimized obsession, which ended up eroding my performance. And I was less healthy, I got more sick. And so it took a while to get back from that.
So that's the health one, or that's the race one. What was you said there was a work-related one.
And that was really because, so when I quit racing, went back to university, studied sports science at university, then eventually, like many failed athletes, set up my own coaching business and started to work with a really interesting group of clients. I thought I was going to work with professional athletes, but the people who paid the bills were these super enthusiastic amateur riders.
Sure.
So I was in London at the time. These were finance professionals. They were technology workers, management consultants who worked 80 hours a week and wanted to go and
had
race.
a $20,000 bike.
Oh, easily. Yeah. They were a really interesting bunch. But when I started working with them, I realized that unless I could find a way to quantify the load associated with their working life, I couldn't plan their physical training effectively. And I observed that the days that they had a really hard day at work, they might not be able to finish the training session that I'd set them that they were able to complete easily a week before when workload was lower. So I started to apply a different set of tools to try and quantify the load associated with knowledge work where we think for a living. And so I was measuring things like heart rate variability, which we can dig into if you're curious, but essentially how well recovered you are at night.
Yeah.
Psychological measures about the effort they were putting in, behavioural measures, looking at how many hours they worked, and ended up developing this conceptualization of knowledge work like a cognitive endurance activity. So some people were interested in that idea. I ended up getting headhunted by this human performance company in Switzerland, and that really opened up so many incredible opportunities for me. So I was applying this thinking, this model with Formula One teams, not just drivers, the people behind the scenes with Fortune 500 companies. I was traveling the world. And I was really driven. My new goal became, how do I achieve professional success in this domain?
Sure. How did you define that?
So, well, for me, a lot of that was about being able to have the opportunity to explore, to apply my curiosity, to try and develop expertise in this domain, because I was just so fascinated by how we can learn how to optimize human performance in the workplace. But also get the opportunity to work with really interesting people in bigger domains. So big companies where we might be able to move the needle and improve thousands of people's lives. And that drive, that goal-directed behavior, as you might call it, in many ways was really positive. But I became so obsessed, I was neglecting to apply the lessons that I was teaching other people. And so much of my thinking was based on this idea that we need to not combine effort with this hyper-optimization, measuring everything, quantifying everything. It was actually about finding this blend between effort and recovery.
Yep.
And as much as I was teaching that, I'd kind of lost sight of it in my own life. And so at one point, I was doing 100 plus flights a year. I was, there were way too many missed dinners with families, missed weekends. We had young kids at this time. And my wife's amazing. Like, she kind of, wasn't giving me a hard time, but I knew in myself that I wasn't as present as I should be. And I kept going like that for a couple of years. But then, life, something happened. One morning I was in the shower and I found a lump. I received this diagnosis that changed everything. And, finding out I had cancer was like someone taking a stick, putting it through the front wheel of my bike, and found myself flying through the air.
And what age were you when that happened?
So that was only 4 and a bit years ago. So I was in my late 30s then, and really, that forced me to confront this hard truth that I hadn't been applying these lessons that I'd been teaching other people. That goal professionally of trying to succeed, and for me that meant having a really positive impact. It was it was a positive goal, but that obsession led me to lose sight of what was most important and apply those same lessons to myself. And so that cancer experience really forced this kind of reset, this rethink, and a recognition that as much as goals can be helpful, they can be harmful if we become unhelpfully obsessed.
Sure. How are you different on the other side of that?
Yeah, so I think I'm just much more aware of the fact that I am not superhuman. I think until then, I genuinely believed, even though I don't think I would have articulated it, that I was the exception to the rule. And if I'm really honest with you. So as much as I would talk about effort and recovery to other people, about not being always on, I did my PhD looking at the sustained high performance in knowledge work and always on work and the risks of never switching off. Ironically, I just didn't apply any of that. In fact, I was always on to get my PhD done. So what's changed is that I recognise that I am human, and that I do need to take a dose of my own medicine. And I'm not saying the cancer happened because I didn't, but it really forced me to think about what really matters. And so I'm much more deliberate now about the decisions that I make, and it's not in some grand transformation. It's just in the small things. So I'll give you a practical example of that. I was terrible for being distracted in family time. So, sitting at the table, email comes in, I'll probably reply to it.
Yeah.
Because...
Do you have notifications on?
I did, yeah. And so one of the shifts has been just being more intentional about trying to be present, and trying to be with who I am, not be aware that my mind can shift into all other places. Also, trying to be deliberate about having a day off each week. So,
what does a day off look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, it's about trying to be disciplined and not working and doing something that proactively restores me. Yeah. So there's this really interesting idea that people think of recovery as something passive, but actually the evidence would indicate that it's something we have to do. And there's a great framework that describes this. It's called the Recovery Experiences Framework. And it describes the several dimensions of recovery experience that really helps to restore us. So one of those is experiencing what's called psychological detachment, so a sense of mental distance from your work. Okay. So I try and do that. But for me, that often means I need to do something to distract myself. So physical activity is quite a good one for me. So maybe going for a long bike ride or even just a walk. Second one's relaxation. So try and do something where my cognitive load decreases. Because again, I'm such a curious person. There can be a tendency to dig in some pretty meaty content on my day off. Yeah. And I have to tell myself, actually, this is maybe not the day to do that. Allow my brain to relax. Maybe even let my body relax as well.
So are you reading like fiction during that? I mean, like what does that look like?
Yeah, so I mean, my tendency would be to kind of read some academic research papers that I was curious to read and to catch up on.
It does not sound relaxing.
And so, but exactly, and it's not really. I'd convinced myself it was, but it's not.
My wife will say, like, if she sees me packing business books for a vacation, she's like, "I know you're sneaking work in." Yeah, like that's you sneaking work. Like if you're catching up on business books. Yep. And I always joke like she's gonna catch me in the closet on email. And like that's like I've snuck away to answer emails so academic books. Okay, so are you reading tabloids? Like how far the other direction? Like are you how far are you going the other direction?
I probably wouldn't actually read much, and instead I might kind of like watch a show watch a movie with the kids, and just try and do something that's totally non-work related, that's relaxing. Because for me, one of my challenges is I'm so curious. I will overconsume content. Yeah. And so having a day off for me is trying to deliberately have a day where I'm not just getting more and more input. Yeah. So the third dimension is really interesting. It's about it's called mastery experiences, and it describes how when we are fully immersed in learning something new, then that can really help us to experience some of that psychological detachment, that mental distance. But ideally, it needs to be non-work related. And so, I mean, people would be really surprised to know that I'm a geek about lots of things, I'm sure.
I think they're shocked.
They'll be like, I can't believe this. But I love coffee. And I've got a really overly complex espresso machine at home. Okay. So, the full kind of dual boiler, E61 group, blah, blah, blah. People who like coffee will know what that means. Yeah. And so just taking the time to really like dial in that grind setting to make that perfect espresso is like a mastery experience for me that I really enjoy. And the final one is about control. And that really describes a sense of autonomy. So deploying your time and energy in a way that's aligned with what you want to do rather than someone else's schedule. And so if you can experience those four things, this is what I try and do to recharge. Experience that sense of detachment, which sometimes is the byproduct, relaxation, mastery, control. Proactively, I find at the end of that day, I've recharged in a way that I didn't for way too long.
And you're trying to do that once a week, and then what's a vacation look like?
You know what? I find vacations really, really hard.
Yeah, same.
And so everyone is like, "Oh, you must be really looking forward to your vacation." And I'm like, "No, I'm stressed about my vacation."
Yeah.
I mean, I'm curious, John. Why do you find them hard? Because I know you're kind of interviewing me here, but I
like what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not escaping. My vacation isn't escape from drudgery. I enjoy this. This is part of my job. When we were at GLS, that was technically we were doing our job, but it was also an amazing experience where we got to share the stage with Nick Saban and Craig Rochelle and all these amazing people. So I don't feel like I'm escaping from something. I'm leaving something I enjoy, but I can overdo that. And then I like a schedule, I like a routine, I like a rhythm. And so a day where there's 12 hours of nothing, I feel kind of unmoored. So I need an activity that distracts me. Yeah. My favorite example is on our honeymoon. It was like day 3 and I'd already read the book I brought. and I wandered off. We were in Jamaica, and I found a ping pong tournament, and I stayed like 4 hours and won the ping pong tournament. And when I came back, my new wife, my bride, was like, "Where have you been?" I was like, "I just won an international ping pong tournament." She didn't seem that excited, but I was like, I still wanted to perform. So that's why I find it stressful.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. So are you Jamaican national ping pong champion now?
Well, I mean, sandals. Yeah, sandals 2001, and I beat a British guy, so that's extra international.
Great. I hope you got a trophy for that.
Yeah, no, a little leather, a little leather pair of sandals. We went to the award ceremony. My wife was like, "I can't believe we're doing this."
If that's not on your next bio before your next speaking gig,
I should add that. That would impress a lot of people. But so what does vacation look? How are you preparing for it? What are you doing on it? How often are you doing it? Yeah. Give me the Dr. James Hewitt Guide to Vacation.
Well, there's some really interesting research around vacations.
See, I knew you would start the sentence that way. There's some research about vacations,
and it's looked at the optimum duration for vacations, and it actually seems that a 3 to 4 day vacation, which we call holidays in England, is actually as effective in terms of restoring mood and energy as a much longer vacation, like 10 to 14 days, because it seems that recovery kind of starts to peak and then plateau.
Okay.
And so the evidence would indicate that you're probably better to have more frequent shorter vacations than less frequent longer ones. But the other interesting factor is that there's other research that indicates the most effective vacations have several characteristics, but one of the most important is that experience of control, but also an experience that you're in an environment where you feel safe and deloaded from other responsibilities. I mean, this is why it's really hard when you've got young kids, because vacation is just another type of work, right? And it can be even more chaotic.
I'm thinking about a family going to Disney right now, and deloaded is not the word I would use.
So when the kids were younger, I actually learned to accept that some parts of that vacation were not actually vacation. Because I think sometimes parents end up beating themselves up because you feel like this should be the best experience of your life as a family, but actually you're exhausted. And so for me, kind of one of my kind of tricks was to accept that, acknowledge it, and say, this is about facilitating a fantastic experience for my kids, but then be deliberate, either in small chunks during the vacation, or maybe even when I came home, to say, I'm going to have a little bit of time to really recharge and recover. And just be honest about that. But really, for me, it is about looking for those opportunities for more frequent, shorter periods, where maybe I might just say, we'll have a long weekend somewhere, or even a day in the week where I'll just go for a long bike ride, for example. Rather than fixating and putting all my hope in this, 10-day, 14-day vacation, hoping that's going to do everything for me for the next 12 months. Yeah, exactly.
Are you talking about kind of planning vacations, planning in general? What type of planner are you? Are you, because I'm interviewing you right now in October. We're coming up towards the end of the year. Are you I kind of have rough goals for the year? Are you I do my year month by month? Like this morning when you woke up, did you have a pretty clear plan for the day? How dialed in are you with your calendar? And you said the word control a number of times already. How do you kind of plan your day, your week, your year?
So I'm a very detailed planner.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is because paradoxically, I'm actually a very chaotic person. So I'll give you an example of that. People think that I'll be the kind of guy who has got a perfect desk with like everything minimalist and it's all kind of really dialed in. But my wife will tell you, like my office is for most of the time completely chaotic, and then periodically I have this kind of burst of activity where I like sort it all out and dial it all in. And the part of the reason is because I find like tidying really, really boring. But also there's just so much stuff going on in my mind all the time. So I find that unless I have a really clear plan for each day and also laid out for the months ahead, everything just falls apart. The other kind of weird thing with me is that I can remember so much academic literature. For whatever reason, I've just got this brain where I read an academic paper and generally speaking, I'll remember the results, which is why, as you noted, if people ask me things, I'm like, well, there's a study. But if my wife asked me to go to the grocery store, which we call the supermarket, and if I don't have a list, even if it's like 3 items, I will generally forget 1 or 2 items. I'll get there. And so there's this weird tension in my mind. And so for me, the planning and having very detailed lists, and so today was dialed, all the timings. Partly it's because I know that if I don't do that, my brain's just going to go in a million directions and I'll probably forget something really important. Rather than me doing that because I'm naturally a very kind of process and structured person. Because as much as I'm a scientist, sometimes I think my brain works a bit more like an artist, actually. I'm kind of all over the place, making weird connections.
Yeah.
I just float away without my to-do list.
I could totally see that. I feel similar. The thing I loved about your book, and it was probably, I think the last chapter was my favorite chapter, because I feel like you go in and you dispute in a research-based way a lot of common hyper-optimizing motivational fluff. So I'm curious from your perspective, if I said to you, what are the three like go-getter hustle culture statements that you think are the dumbest? Or approaches. Like for me, one I always joke about is like when somebody says, sometimes you just have to jump and grow wings on the way down. And I think that's not how gravity works at all. That's a terrible plan.
Yeah.
Or there's no harm in asking. There's plenty of harm in asking. You can ask somebody for the wrong connection in the wrong way and actually do damage. When you're on Instagram and you see a guru and they don't have a shirt on and they're on a jet or whatever, pick your poison for motivational fluff. What are the three things that drive you the craziest?
So I think the first one would be this idea that it's the idea that all we need is more drive.
Yeah.
Secondly, all we need is more passion.
Yeah.
And that we just need to do it on our own. That you've just kind of got to lock in, go full monk mode.
Yeah.
And the reason that those three are really problematic is that there's elements of truth in all of them, but they're massively exaggerated in a really unhelpful way. And it ends up compromising our most fundamental human needs, our psychological needs.
So would you say willpower, passion, and monk mode are the three that get you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd say the reason for that is that there's this really interesting model called self-determination theory, which I don't know if you've come across it before, but it was first described by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan more than 40 years ago.
I have like the little book that Deci wrote about it.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? And it's become the most enduring model in the psychology of human thriving. And it's become enduring because it's so predictive of positive outcomes. There's some models that sound good, but they don't stick around because they don't actually predict anything good or bad, whereas this really does. And they contend that humans have three fundamental psychological needs: autonomy, feeling self-directed; competence, feeling capable and effective; and relatedness, which is about our connection with others. And the problem with those myths, the kind of the hustlers myths, the myths of hustle culture, the hyper-optimizers, is that they basically distort those three fundamental psychological needs. So that sense of autonomy, being self-directed, you fall into the trap that it's about that you think, I just need more self-control. But there's this really interesting phenomena called repenting hyperopia.
Repenting hyperopia.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it describes how later in life, people sometimes reflect that excessive use of self-control actually meant that they missed out on joy.
Yeah.
At the expense of maybe pursuing some goals. So again, it's this kind of overextension. The second one around competence, that you just need more drive, you just need more passion. There's this really interesting phenomenon that describes, it's called the dualistic model of passion. And it describes how we can experience a harmonious passion, where we're doing something, we're improving, and it feels flexible and energizing and fun.
Fills you up.
Or it become obsessive passion, where that drive for competence, for getting better, is actually characterized by rigid persistence. And it's actually quite a significant contributor to burnout. So that obsessive passion compromises that sense of competence. And you could characterize this, or you might experience this, where if you can't do the thing that you're trying to build competence in, that you're trying to do, you feel bad. But then if you do the thing, you feel bad, rather than it being healthy, flexible, energizing. And then this monk mode compromises relatedness. And it's this idea that somehow, I just need to focus on myself. Yeah. I'm protecting my peace.
Lock in.
Exactly. And again, there's bits of truth in that. But it's so clear that self-improvement is not selfish. And again, there's this really interesting notion that describes how when we invest in others, we actually get more back. We've experienced it, many of us have, but the data bear this out. And I think it comes from this idea that life is a zero-sum game, and this is what you see online. It's like if I invest in you, there's somehow less energy for me.
Yeah.
Whereas actually the evidence points completely to the contrary, that if you really want to develop yourself, give away of yourself. So these three things really frustrate me because I think they compromise some of the most important fundamental factors for human thriving. That sense of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in a sweet spot.
Do you feel like, as a communicator, because I feel this pressure, there's a pressure to say outlandish things to get attention. So the other day I saw somebody in our space say, AI is so good, in 5 years, colleges won't exist. And of course that's not true. Like Oxford is not in 5 years going to be like, hey, let's just wrap up. Like, that's crazy. Like, that was a outlandish, not true statement said for clicks. As a scientist, as a doctor, do you ever feel like you get to a line where you go, I'm not going to say it that way just to get any attention because, one, it's not true. Two, it won't help somebody. Because if they try it this way, they're going to fail because it's not. Do you ever feel that pressure as a communicator?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, it's a daily challenge. Because I think you know that social media favours really definitive statements that promote some type of reaction. And the interesting thing is you know, the algorithms figured out pretty quickly that rage and anger is actually probably one of the most effective ways to gain engagement. Even more so than kind of, you know, jealousy. It's like if you make people angry, you can make your content go viral. Yeah. So there's often an incentive for people to make big statements, even if they know they're not true. Just because they know they're going to get a reaction, good and bad, and maybe the bad is even better. But the thing about science is that it's nuanced, and actually it's a process as much about figuring out what we don't know as it is about trying to define what we do know. You know, there's a tension between the two, and that's why if you generally speak to a scientist and you ask them a definitive question, their answer is often, it depends. Yeah. But that really doesn't lend itself to social media. And it's so easy to make definitive statements because you know that it makes a nice headline and a social media post or a story or whatever. But I feel that my integrity is on the line. Like I just couldn't do that in good conscience. Yeah. I know some people do, but I think a lot of people do it. They're not even bad they don't even have bad intentions. Yeah. It's just that, you know, they will read a headline, you know, a title of a paper, and translate that into kind of their own understanding, which doesn't really reflect the nuance. And so there's a massive temptation for me to kind of be the kind of the mythbuster or the debunker. Yeah, yeah. But at the same time, I think the challenge is that I don't want to kind of build a brand about being the guy who just goes around trying to tell people
like
why they're wrong.
Like the wet blanket. You know? You don't want to be like, well, actually.
Exactly, because so many people share this stuff with good intentions.
Sure, sure.
But where I can, I like to try and bring a bit of nuance and just share how you know, this may be true, but this is maybe where it's not true, and this is the context behind it.
Well, nuance aside, because we need a great clip for Instagram. Tell us the exact number of days it takes to form a habit. I'm just because you say in the book the range. Give us the range. It's massive. That might be the clip because we hear that and people post that. Oh, if you want to form a new habit, this is the day. This is the day. Yeah. Your book had a range of a small number to a large number. Walk us through that range.
Yeah. So I mean, you can build a habit in as quickly as a couple of days.
4 days?
Yeah, 4 days, or it could be over 200 days.
Yeah, so...
and it depends on so many factors. It depends on the complexity of the task, how familiar you are with it already, your motivation to build that new habit, whether it really matters to you. Yeah. And I think we've all seen this, and we've felt it, we've experienced it, but it's so tempting. You know, there's these people who say, oh, it takes 21 days to build a habit. The interesting thing is that that finding was based on how long it took people to get used to their new face following plastic surgery. Yeah. But that finding...
It's a weird habit, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's not particularly generalizable, is it? Yeah. And you see that all the time. You know, people try and generalize these statistics beyond their original intention.
So it's just a range.
Yeah. So if you want to build a new habit, the key is to prioritize consistency, trying to combine that with your sense of who you are. I am now a person who is doing this, rather than fixate on a particular number, because I can't tell you how long it's going to take to automaticize your habit. It depends on so many different factors.
Well, there's a lot of people that listen to this show that would self-identify as perfectionists. If you were going to say, hey, here's 3 things perfectionists need to know, or here's 3 ways to push beyond your perfectionism and enjoy the scope of life more, what advice would you give to a perfectionist?
So there's 2 types of perfectionism. Other-orientated perfectionism, which is where we think that people expect perfection of us, and self-orientated perfectionism, which describes expecting perfection of ourselves. So I'll speak to the self-orientated perfectionism. The number one thing you can do is to try to exercise some self-compassion. And so the evidence is really compelling that can help to overcome some of that self-orientated perfectionism. And the most simple way that I can describe that is try to be the friend to yourself that you aspire to be to others.
That's good.
So self-compassion is the antidote to self-orientated perfectionism.
What does that look like in the practical sense? Is it how you talk to yourself? Is it you leave yourself notes? Like, what is if I said to you, I want to practice self-compassion, how would I practice it?
So I think it is about paying attention to your soundtrack, John.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
Your self-talk, your inner monologue. And just notice what you're saying to yourself, and notice if you're saying things to yourself that you wouldn't say to a friend. I see this in my own life. So for example, say I'm working towards a goal and I fail to achieve that goal, whether it was trying to succeed professionally, or maybe there was a speaking engagement I wanted to get and they selected another speaker. Yeah. There's a tendency sometimes for my self-talk to be quite negative and self-critical. And so just to pay attention to that and think, what would I say to another speaker who experienced this, who just lost a gig, for example? Sometimes my self-talk will say, well, you're not good enough, James. Yeah. They're always going to overlook you. Yeah. Well, I would say, well, maybe that other speaker was a better fit and there's going to be future opportunities. Just look at the evidence for that. That's what I'd say to someone else. So why don't I say it to myself? So there's various things you can do, but my number one tip is really pay attention to that self-talk, that inner monologue, and make sure that you are being the friend to yourself that you'd aspire to be to other people.
That's great feedback. And now it's got me curious about other types of people that listen to this show, because I think there's another type of person that gets into self-sabotage because they can't accept good things. Like they've set a limit of what they can achieve or accomplish, or their parents only accomplished this amount of things, so they feel like if they go beyond that, they're doing some sort of dishonor to their family. Somebody who has a hard time accepting or enjoying the good things that happen to them in life, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a really common challenge. I think, especially, funnily enough, among high performers, I think people are often so driven, but at the same time can't enjoy what they've experienced and maybe feel guilty about it. There's a really interesting piece of research, John.
There is, of course.
And it relates to something called explanatory style. And there's a model related to it called the 3P model, which I find can be really helpful for people who struggle with this. I struggle with it. And the 3Ps stand for permanence, pervasiveness, and personalization. So the permanence one, there's a tendency for people who struggle with this that when good things happen, they assume that it's only going to be temporary. So they don't really let the good thing sink in. And when a bad thing happens...
don't get used to it.
Yeah, a bad thing happens, they think it's going to be like that forever. So say, in my case, to make this really practical, I can win a gig for a really big event that I'm really looking forward to. So like when I got to speak at the Global Leadership Summit this year, I was so excited when I booked that gig. My tendency is to be like, right, great, move on to the next thing, rather than really letting that opportunity sink in. A bad thing happens, I lose a gig. Oh, it's all going downhill. My career's over. Yeah. Permanence. And pervasiveness is about how we globalize and how we explain good and bad things. So there's a tendency for people like me sometimes who struggle with the good things to globalize failure. So say, again, in that example, I miss out. I don't book that speaking gig. I'd say, well, I never win anything. Never good at anything. Yeah. Now, obviously, that's extreme. I probably wouldn't be that harsh on myself, but it's just an example of how we globalize the bad things. But then we localize the good things. So when a really good thing happens, we say, well, it's just a one-off. Only relates to this. Yeah. You wouldn't say, well, actually, no, like maybe globalize it. This is because I've really worked at this, because I've got some great characteristics as a professional, as a human. So you look at the broader implications of that good thing. And the final one is about personalization. Generally, if the permanence and the pervasiveness are well calibrated, you get the personalization right. And the personalization describes how much you attribute success or failure to others versus yourself. And so, again, there's a tendency, if you struggle with this, that with the personalization piece, if a bad thing happens, you tend to over-attribute it to yourself. So you say, it's all my fault, rather than recognizing there might be environmental factors that could play a role. And then if a good thing happens, you say, well, I got lucky, rather than attributing it to maybe the qualities, the hard work that you put in. So I know that's a very long answer to a short question, but if people are struggling to experience that, the joy associated with doing well, so look at those 3Ps of permanence, pervasiveness, personalization, and reflect on how they're playing out in your life and work. And it can be quite a helpful tool to maybe move beyond that unhelpful tendency.
To that point about high performers, how do you help high performers celebrate? Like if because I had a business coach once say, he said, how are you at celebrating? I said, terrible. And he said one of his activities was like, go thank all the books you've written. Like, he's like, I can see a shelf of them behind you. I want you to go touch each cover and be like, hey, thanks. Like, celebrate that you did that. If a high performer came to you and said, hey, I'm already on to the next thing, I don't celebrate well. And maybe, you know, for me, where it impacts is I lead a team now. And if I'm already on to the next thing, it exhausts the team because they deserve to celebrate. Like, they worked really hard on that. How do you help high performers celebrate? And they might not value it.
Yeah. So I think, so just generally speaking, if you're trying to introduce a new behavior, whatever it is, or a new approach, I would say systems beat self-control every time. We really over-index on our ability to apply willpower to solve problems. It's generally systems that work. And it's no different when you look at celebration. So generally for me, and for the people that I'd work with, I'd recommend that they create rituals for celebration. And essentially things that you do. The problem is, it's like if you just leave it to chance, you probably won't do it.
Yeah.
Likely related to that challenge that I mentioned earlier around the permanence, the pervasiveness. You localize it and you think it's temporary. So you just say, oh, great, now move on to the next thing. So can you create some type of celebration ritual individually and as a team? So for example, for me, one of the ways I do this is with my family. And so if I've got a big win, we'll go out for a really nice meal as a family. So we've got 2 kids now, they're 11 and 14. They really enjoy going to restaurants. They're old enough not to kind of throw food everywhere, thankfully, most of the time. And so as a family, have this ritual celebration. So there's a couple of places that kids really like to go, and we like to go as well. And just get into the ritual, the routine of a big win and doing that. Then periodically during the year, like my wife and I will go away for a weekend to celebrate. Leave the kids with grandparents, and we'll stay in a nice hotel, have some nice meals, have some nice time together. And as a team, you might figure out, as a team, what can you do? Probably one of the best things to do is speak to your team and crowdsource some ideas. Because even that process of speaking to your team and saying, you know, I want to get better at celebrating because I know I'm not very good at it. What could we do? What would you like to do that would make you feel valued, that would be fun, that means we could have inject some joy into this team and celebrate together for all the hard work that we put into whatever we've been working towards. Even just surfacing that idea makes people feel valued, and it's a form perhaps of people anticipate the celebration, and often it's the anticipation that's better than the actual thing. So whatever the case, systems over self-control, ritualize it, have some routines and some ways of celebrating. Don't leave it to chance, because if you're ever anything like me and high performers I work with, if you don't have a system, the time will just pass by and
you'll just move on.
Celebrate.
Speaking of rituals, what would you say from your own personal life are some of your oddest rituals? So I've asked that question of a couple of high performers, and sometimes it's their hobbies. Sometimes it's, you know, they, like for me, I mean, maybe it's not that odd, but I always plug my phone in downstairs at night, because if it's in the room with me, there's no way I'm not going to use it. So I have to physically leave it downstairs. It's like it doesn't go upstairs. Like it has like a kennel almost. What would you say are some of yours that if we could see your life in the way you were, and maybe it's travel, maybe you do like I know you do that app, like you are really deliberate about time zones and light, but what's one of your oddest rituals?
Oh, this is an exclusive, John. I never shared this before. So I mentioned I've got quite a chaotic brain.
Yeah.
And
some things obviously
I remember really, really well. Some things I just can't remember.
Yeah.
And I get really stressed about packing and repacking, which is quite difficult in my profession because I do it a lot. Because if I'm not careful, I'll forget things.
Yeah.
So when I leave a hotel room and everything's packed up, I go around every part of the room and I actually speak out loud. This area is clear. This area is
really
clear.
Good.
Because if I don't,
yeah,
I get outside my hotel room, I'm walking down the corridor, and I'm like, did I forget something? And I have to go back in to check.
Yeah.
So, and I got that idea actually from, this is something that it's in Japanese culture and Japanese work culture, that if you watch kind of Japan Airlines, they go through this kind of ritualized process when they're kind of closing up the door, for example. And it's a way to kind of ensure high quality, that repetition, and also remind yourself that you've done the right thing, because it's ritualized, so it's very clear if something's got broken in that chain, that cycle. So that's my little kind of one of my little quirks for leaving a hotel room.
I like that. This area is clear.
Exactly.
So you're more likely to leave something in the room versus forget to bring it?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you, because I have a packing list.
Yeah.
And if I, like the other day, I forgot something important because I was like, I don't need the list today. And I 100% forgot it. What's your technique there?
I have a list.
Yeah.
And I did exactly the same thing as you for this trip. So last week I was in Munich. I was in Grand Rapids.
Those are close too. A lot of people are like, give me that direct flight
Yeah.
from Munich to Grand Rapids. There's no, it's not happening.
Through Chicago. And then I'm going straight from here to Ireland. So this is a really busy trip, back-to-back speaking engagements. And
not touching home at all?
No, remembering.
One big bag?
Yeah, exactly. Remembering everything.
Yeah.
But I was in a rush because I've had a really busy week leading up to it.
Sure.
I had like 6 events before this. And I was like, I packed and repacked so many times this year.
Yeah.
I didn't need my list, right, John?
Yeah.
I didn't need it. So my wife dropped me off at this train station, because actually this started in London with another podcast last week. I forgot about that. Got to the train station and I got out the car. I was like, I forgot my wallet.
Wallet?
Yeah. Can you believe that? So important. I've got my passport, I've got everything. I forgot my wallet.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, I didn't have time. I had to get into London to record this podcast with my wheelie bag. Yeah. And then after I'd recorded the podcast, I had to get the train back home, get my wallet from my wife, who was kind enough to drive to the train station, and then get back into London, get to the airport, and on my way. Yeah. And so,
So is wallet on your list?
Yeah.
Okay, because I don't have wallet on my list, but I'm more like, I've had to purchase belts in so many cities.
Oh, yeah.
Or like things. Back when people were wearing ties a lot more, I'd have to buy ties at a lot of places. Yeah. And then I finally made the list. What other lists do you have?
What other types of lists?
Yeah.
I have a to-do list for every day.
Yeah.
With the kind of, and I have to do this for the tasks I work on as well. So if I've got a block of work time, even if it's like 2 hours or something, or even an hour, I will have a list for kind of the things I'm going to work on and try and create a time aspiration for completing that task.
Ooh.
Because if I don't, I get distracted so easily.
A time aspiration.
Yeah.
That feels very compassionate to yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of, so again, it's like, I find that it kind of gamifies the experience for me. And it works really well if there's a task that I find a bit boring.
Yeah.
So, if one of the challenges for me is if I'm preparing a slide deck, for example, for a client. So I do a lot of speaking, that's my main thing.
Sure.
But I also do some consulting and implement some of these ideas. And often one of the outputs will be some type of slide deck.
Yeah.
And I've got all the notes, I've got all the data, but I can't really be bothered to turn that into the slide deck.
Yeah.
And I've got to do it.
Yeah.
So my time aspiration will be, I'm going to try and do this in 1 hour.
Yeah.
And I know it's a bit of a stretch, and it kind of becomes a game then, and it stops me from being tempted to, get my smartphone, like look on social media, distract myself because I don't want to do it.
Are you using a timer on your phone? How are you timing that hour?
So generally what I'll do is I'll use my watch. So I don't have a smartwatch, I use a mechanical watch.
Yeah.
And it's a dive watch, so I've got a bezel on it.
Ah.
And so I use the bezel. You can hear it going.
Yeah.
To time the block, and often I'll Pomodoro my time. So 25-minute block of focus, 5-minute recovery, repeat. Because if my phone is near me, it's too risky. I'll end up my dopamine-seeking brain is going to go down the social media rabbit hole.
If I visit Instagram, I'm down the path.
Yeah.
It's funny for me with slides. This is such a specific thing. For years, I would have a client call, and then I'd be like, "I'll do those slides later." And that was really hard because then a week later, 2 weeks later. So now one of my rituals is if I do a half-hour client call, the next half hour is me putting together slides. They're sent to my assistant within the hour.
Great.
And that ties it because I'm fresh from the client call. If I separate them, there's a gap that develops and they're not as good.
Yeah. That's a great discipline. And again, it's about systems, not self-control.
Yeah. It's funny to me, you use the word curious to describe yourself. I feel like you're pretty good at the self-compassion thing. Like you and I both have very active brains. I just finished my 12th book. The only way you write 12 books is if you have a very busy brain. Like the only way you do 6 speaking engagements in a week is if you have a very busy brain. But you describe it as I'm curious. What are some other positive words you've learned to describe yourself as?
So I think I'm very good at perseverance. So I'm someone who just keeps going.
Yeah.
Grinds it out.
Yeah.
And sometimes to a fault. And I think that comes from probably my endurance sport background. So I've always had this tendency.
You're on a bike by yourself. It's a pretty lonely sport.
Yeah. And so I'd say that perseverance. Also, I think I'm someone who has got good self-control, but that's something that I've had to, I think, develop more than it necessarily being an innate trait.
Okay.
So, my tendency, as I mentioned, is probably to be quite chaotic and not super self-regulated. So I've had to really work at that. But the challenge with that is people then, there's quite a big difference between how people perceive me and how I actually am, I think. So people see me from the outside as this like super together guy.
Yeah.
Who's like got everything dialed and everything nailed.
Yeah.
But like, if you spent some time with me behind the scenes, like my wife knows the real me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I can be quite disorganized, pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
Like, quite goofy.
Yeah.
Like, I work really hard to appear like a normal person, but like actually, you know, I'm a bit strange and a bit all over the place.
Yeah.
So self-control is something I've worked out, and maybe worked out a bit too hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's funny. Do you, speaking of self-control and kind of, you're very measured, you're calculated. Do you wear any wearables? Any devices that track?
I wear one.
Okay, what do you wear?
It's an Aura ring.
Ah, okay.
So I use that. So there's one metric I'm really interested in called heart rate variability.
HRV?
HRV, yeah. And it measures, that's a measure of the difference in time between each heartbeat.
Okay. What does that reveal?
So it's an index of your psychophysiological resources, John.
Ah, okay.
So I bet you waited.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I was going to guess
I know it was on the
that.
tip of your tongue, wasn't it? And essentially, that's just a fancy way of saying that it's a measure of the resources that we've got in our brain and our body, in our mind and our body. That's psychophysiological. Because the evidence indicates that when we have a relatively higher HRV reading relative to our baseline, and so you track this every night, you get a baseline over time, that's an indication that you're going to have more drive physically and mentally.
Yeah.
It's something I studied in my PhD, actually, that on days where people's heart rate variability is relatively higher, they often feel more motivated, they report that they're more productive at work. If you suddenly get a drop in HRV, or it's trending down over time, that's an indicator often that your resources are starting to get drained, both mentally and physically. And so for me, that measure over time just acts as another signal in the mix to help me get a sense of, you know, am I trending in the right direction? Do I need to maybe invest a bit more in my recovery? Because that perseverance strength is really helpful a lot of the time, because I can just keep pushing through. But it can also mean that I get a bit detached from what's actually going on in my body.
Sure.
And I don't want to over-rely on a wearable, but for me, it can be quite a helpful tool just to get that extra insight, to nudge me and say, again, like I said earlier, used to like to convince myself I was a superhuman, and an exception to the rule. I've come to realise that, no, I'm just a human who needs to rest.
Now, you don't use it for sleep then?
So I look at sleep duration and sleep timing, but no wearable does a very good job of measuring sleep stages.
Yeah.
So
that when they go like, hey, great REM sleep, you're like, no, you don't know that.
Yeah, the kind of the what's called the maximum percentage error, MAPE, is very, very high. So, and this relates to a challenge of something called sensitivity and specificity, which is boring. We don't need to get into that. But essentially, it's not a very accurate way. It's also, there's a really curious phenomena which describes how our perception of our sleep profoundly influences our performance.
It's a placebo to a degree, right?
Huge, for good and for bad. So they've done several great studies on this, but one, for example, shows that if you believe that you've slept longer than you actually have, because it's called a sleep deception study. So they put you in what's called a timeless environment, and then so you don't know what time it is, and then when they tell you what time it is and how long you think you've slept for, they measure what happens in your perception, but also your physiology. And the remarkable thing is if you trick someone into believing they slept longer than they did, not only do they feel like they slept longer, their brain performs like a more awake brain.
It's crazy.
You see this suppression in something called delta brainwave activity. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true. So if you wake up feeling fine, but then your wearable tells you that you slept less or you got less REM sleep, then you automatically feel worse. So on a trip like this, for example, where I'm still applying all my protocols around jet lag and whatever, but still my sleep isn't perfect, I actually don't monitor my sleep at all when I'm away, because the relative upside is too small relative to the potential downside.
Yeah, the potential I always joke that you can feel like a failure at being unconscious.
Oh, completely.
Like you can wake up and go, I got an F. Even while I sleep, I'm underperforming. And that you're right, it doesn't help you. And isn't that part of how, tell me if I'm wrong about this, aren't some drugs, sleep aids, they help you forget that you weren't asleep?
Oh, in terms of sleep medication specifically? Yeah, so I mean, this is the problem with a lot of sleep medication, is that most sleep medications sedate you, they don't restore you.
Okay.
So they actually disrupt the architecture of sleep between that REM and that non-REM sleep, REM sleep and deep sleep. There's some new medications that maybe are a bit better in that respect, but that's why long-term use of sleep medication can be problematic, because it's not truly restorative sleep.
The architecture of sleep. See, even in that answer, James, just bringing knowledge. I love the way you frame things. So fascinating. So again, I'm curious. I love that we keep going kind of in and out of the book, in and out of your life, because that's the stuff that's interesting to me. We've talked about your hobbies a little bit. There's the coffee. What's something that you tend to overspend on and something you underspend on? So like I asked a friend that question, and he buys every Omega watch for every James Bond movie. Like when there's a new James Bond movie, they have a new model, he buys the watch, he overspends. But if we were at a restaurant and there was a Danish that nobody ate, he would wrap it in a napkin and bring it with him. He's like, we already bought that Danish. And so you're kind of like, that was a $2 Danish you're carrying in your pocket. It's a little weird. But you have a $15,000 watch. What's something... And the coffee is obviously in the overspend, but for you, what's something you overspend on versus underspend on?
Yeah, I probably also overspend on watches.
Are you a big watch guy?
I do like my watches. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. I've always been really curious about watches.
Sure.
I love mechanical watches.
Yeah.
I worked in Geneva for quite a few years, and that only kind of fed
my
obsession.
Gosh, yeah, that's got to be the capital, right?
I've kind of handed that on to my kids as well now, which is going to be interesting come 18th birthday time.
Oh yeah, a lot of pressure.
But I convinced myself it's an investment, right? Because I'm like, oh, it's a store of value. Like, they're never going to...
Yeah. And people recognize it.
Yeah, and it's an heirloom. I'm going to pass it on to my kids. And,
sure.
I've got all
you never own
of,
it. You just, take care of it for the next generation.
Patek Philippe. Yeah, exactly. That's what an amazing advertising campaign,
by
the way.
Great, yeah.
So that's definitely, I'd say, some would call it an overspend. I call it an investment in the future.
There you go. It's a good way to...
But then in terms of underspend, nothing really springs to mind. I'd say I probably could invest more, and I'd say maybe not monetarily, but probably more time in that rest, that downtime, for myself, with my family too. Because as much as I'm a lot better and I'm on this journey to tackling being always on, it's still a struggle. It's a daily struggle with investing in that downtime and recovering.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say like socks. Like you buy really cheap socks.
Well, that's probably true as well. And I got to say, I am someone who often has holes in my socks and usually only realise at the most inopportune time.
Yeah, as you put on a shoe before an event.
Well, it's usually when I get to someone's house who insists you take the socks off. And then I realise that I've got holes and it's just incredibly embarrassing.
Yeah, and a beautiful watch and holes in the socks.
Well, yeah.
That's funny.
So,
that's funny.
Thanks for highlighting that, John.
Couple last questions. We've addressed like perfectionism. We've addressed folks that maybe self-sabotage. If there's people listening and they would say, James, I feel like my issue is procrastination. How would you give advice to a procrastinator?
So I'd often say to people, where's the procrastination coming from? Because very often procrastination is actually a manifestation of a fear of failure. I've found for many people that I've worked with. So give yourself permission to fail and aim for progress, not perfection. So choose a really small goal. So you've got a big project you're working on. Find what I call a minimum viable action. What's the smallest expression of working towards that goal that you can make a difference on right now and commit to doing that. And that can help to overcome some of that inertia. You give yourself permission to just make progress, not perfection. And consistently, I've found that can help people to overcome that procrastination. But getting to the root of that fear of failure as well can be the real unlock for many
that's
of
what's
us.
really holding you back. Interesting. Okay, only two last questions, and these are easy ones. One, what's on your Mount Rushmore of nonfiction books? So if you said, hey, these are the 4 I always recommend, Mount Rushmore, that's a weird question. We have a bunch of big heads in North Dakota. I think it's North Dakota. I've never been. As an American, I should probably go. But what's your Big Ben of books? That doesn't work the same way. But 4 books that you feel like if you were going to read high-performance books or books that I recommend all the time, or another way to answer the question is, what's the book you've given away more than any other book other than your own?
Yeah, that's so at the moment, I've not given this away loads, but I've recommended it a lot. It's a really, really deep book. It's by a guy called Ian McGilchrist, and it's called The Master and His Emissary.
The Master and His Emissary.
Yeah. And Ian McGilchrist is a really fascinating guy, a psychiatrist, a neuroscientist, a philosopher, and it's a really deep dive into how our brain works and how that influences our experience of the world through the lens of the maybe slightly different roles and functions of the hemispheres of our brain. And so if you can kind of get through it, because it's a big one,
Yeah.
it's just full of really rich and very
It doesn't
deep
sound
insights.
thick based on the title. It sounds like Who Moved My Fish a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. But you're saying it's the opposite of that.
We use the paperbacks, like you could use
You're
it
not
as a
going to
form of
fly with that one.
self-defense. Yeah,
That's
it's
too
a
many
Kindle.
pounds.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that'd be a top one. And there's another interesting book called What Is Health, which is looks at uses a model called allostatic load to understand health, and it's this notion that our kind of bucket of stress can fill up both physiologically and psychologically. So that's quite an interesting one. I've recommended that to quite a few people. And then there's a classic that I've often recommended. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow.
Oh, Daniel Kahneman.
Daniel Kahneman.
Yeah.
Which, again, like that model, some of that is massively oversimplified. But there's some heuristics there. There's rules of thumb, which I find really opens up doors to self-awareness for many of us to figure out maybe the way that we're making decisions and operating in the world.
Yeah, you mentioned stress. I thought that part of your book was worth the whole price of the book. About even just how you think about stress.
Yeah.
That if you change your thought that stress is a good thing, it excites me, it gets me in the zone, versus stress is failure. I just thought that part was fantastic. Would you do a flyover of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's some really interesting research. You could just repeat me saying that, can't you? Which describes how our mindset in relation to stress plays a really fundamental role in determining whether stress is going to be helpful or harmful. So initially, when we experience a stressor, there's something called an appraisal phase, a primary appraisal phase. And essentially, we're deciding, is this thing a threat? Is it a challenge? Or is it something we can ignore? That then shifts into secondary appraisal, where we make a decision. Have I got what it takes to be able to handle this challenge? And that will then determine our stress response physiologically and also our behaviour, how we interact with the world and respond to this stressor. But the evidence indicates that if we can kind of interfere in a positive way with that primary and secondary appraisal phase, it can fundamentally alter our physiology, our body, and our psychology, our brain. So next time you experience something that's challenging, first, acknowledge it. That means don't try and ignore it. Sometimes we try and push stress away, acknowledge it. But then tell yourself, shift your inner narrative and say, this stress, this activation I'm feeling is actually an indicator that something I value is at stake. And then try to transform stress into a form of activation and energy and use that energy to tackle the demand that was causing the stress in the first place. And if you combine that with a shift in your belief, so you acknowledge the stress, you reframe the stress, you use the energy, and shift your belief that stress can be something that actually fuels you rather than harms you, then the evidence indicates that not only are you going to be able to tackle that challenge more effectively, but we see changes in physiology that actually help to protect us from some of the negative impacts of stress. And there's a researcher called Acuff who's done a lot of great research in this. And if anyone wants to dig into that a bit more deeply, it's a very effective method.
It was fantastic. I mean, there's so many parts of the book that I felt like, oh, this could be 10 other books. I mean, the stress section alone, I thought was really fascinating. Well, last question. This was an easy one. Where can people find out more about you?
Well,
give us the links. I always say, give us the links. Where can people follow up if they want to check out the book? Give us all the stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for the opportunity to do that, John. So my new book, Regenerative Performance, just gives people an opportunity to dive deep into all this stuff. I've got some practical frameworks so you can take these ideas and apply them for yourselves and your teams. So that's a great resource for people. I think that'll be really helpful for people who want to think about taking this to the next level. I also give away tons of this content for free on social media. So lots of little segments where, if you're interested in, there's a study on this, then I do that pretty much every day on LinkedIn and also on Instagram, whether that's little videos, deep dives on different topics. So I would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation there. And then on my website, drjameshewitt.com, there's some longer form blog articles. If anyone was interested in me in booking me to speak at an event, for example, then that's an easy way to get hold of me there.
And you're all over the place. And he has a packing list. So if you do want to book him, he'll have pants. Yeah. Because that's on the list. Maybe not a wallet.
Well, I might not have a wallet and I might have holes in my socks.
Yeah, but he'll have pants.
But I'm gonna have my watch.
He's gonna have a beautiful watch. I'm gonna ask some more watch questions when we get off this. Definitely. So, James, this was a blast. I appreciate you joining us. There's been a ton of great information in here, and I loved your book, Read it, finished it today, matter of fact, as I was driving here, the audiobook. So super fun. Thanks for making the time for this.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Great to speak with you, John.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this interview with Dr. James Hewitt. We'll put all the links in the show notes as always. And thank you for writing reviews of this podcast. The reviews you write are always so encouraging. I say that it's hard to do a podcast because you don't get immediate feedback. I'm a public speaker and you often get immediate feedback. But with a podcast, you don't get that unless somebody writes a review. So thank you for writing those reviews. Please make sure you like, subscribe, follow, whatever the kids are saying these days, and keep the reviews coming. I'll see you next week. And remember, all it takes is a goal.